Welcome to Empowered the Podcast. I'm Linda Brand, your host, and I'm here to take you on a journey of growth, healing, and self-discovery. On this podcast, we explore what it means to truly step into your power and create a life you love living. Every episode brings you transformational stories, inspiring interviews, and actionable insights on health, wellness, and mindset. Because let's face it, without our health, we have nothing. I'm joined by coaches, authors, healers, and extraordinary guests sharing their wisdom to help you become the best version of yourself. And you'll also hear from me in solo episodes, diving deep into topics that matter most on the journey to empowerment. So if you're ready to break free, grow, and ignite your potential, you're in the right place. Let's get empowered together. Hello, and welcome to Empowered the Podcast. I am your host, Linda Brand. Thank you for being here. And I'm so excited for today's guest. She calls herself the Pain Alchemist. And for the past 18 years, she has been a peak performance coach and life strategist. Her name is Jessie Torres. She's coached thousands of high performance people from all walks of life and various parts of the world that have achieved success in the highest level of fulfillment. Out of the top 120 coaches on the planet, Jessie ranked either number one or top three in every measurable category while working with the top coaching company in the world. Jessie is fueled by a passionate love for humanity and a burning desire to end suffering. She's driven to discover the truth of the client's deepest potential and unlock the limitless opportunities that leave others in the dark ages. Bringing all levels of mindset, emotional intelligence, energy, and strategy with an authentic, client-driven approach, Jessie's teachings will help you transform your life from pain or trauma into purpose and passion. Jessie refers to as fierce grace. And yeah, you have a story, Jessie. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Thank you, Linda. I'm excited to be here.
Amazing. So the Pain Alchemist, turn your pain into passion, purpose, and power. If you don't look for the gift of your pain trauma, you will only remember the pain. Speak on that a little bit and tell us a little bit about your journey, if you will.
Absolutely. That phrase is something that I found myself repeating over and over again. I trust the divine order in everything. So what I mean by that is that there is, something laid out specifically as a part of your journey, your divine choreography, if you choose to see it that way. And I think that to look at it alternatively is only to be limited or weighed down by what happens to us. So we all experience some form of trauma. I think trauma is a word that people shy away from. And, my definition of trauma is whatever the child made meaning of in the moment of the experience. Right. So we all, it's an unconscious conditioning that we don't even know we do. Right. Like for me, I went through abuse with my father. So that abuse with my father, I made the unconscious decision that I was now dirty, filthy, and no one would love me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because this horrible thing happened, I made this decision. Now, it doesn't have to be something that big. Right. Some people think trauma is just a rape, which of course it is. But trauma, again, being that meaning that you gave, even if you went to the grocery store with your mom and you were playing, you're 5 years old, you're playing with toys in the aisle and she goes to the end of the aisle to grab something. She could see you, but you can't see her. You lift up your head, freak out, right? In that moment, it took 10 seconds. She's like, I'm right here. But in that moment of fear,
Yes.
what was anchored in the unconscious conditioning is I could be left behind. I could be abandoned.
Yes.
Right. And so now the child is clingier with mom, doesn't want her out of his sight. Right. Now he's 35 and he wonders why he can't keep a relationship because he's controlling, possessive, and jealous. Right. And what it really is the core feeling that you could leave me. And so I'm going to hold on too tight. And so a big part of this and my journey was, having gone through, the abuse with my father, my first 18 years, another abusive marriage for another 18 years of, verbal, mental, emotional abuse, and the murder of my brother. I mean, there's just all these things that if I don't choose to look for the gift in my journey, because I don't get to script it. I wish I could. I could design my life exactly the way I want it, that everything would happen perfectly. But I believe there's a greater source. I have to trust in the divine order of it all, even if I don't like it. If there's a lesson for me to gain, if there's a gift, if there's something beautiful for me to find in the pain of losing my brother, then I'm going to find it because there always is. There always is. It's just sometimes when the pain is so profound, and look, I get it. People have been through some very dark things. We can only see the darkness, and we don't see the resilient spirit that got back up.
How do
We
you
don't see the
teach?
beautiful
Yeah.
soul.
How do you teach? So I always say there's always an underlying blessing in every perceived to be negative thing. And I do understand that. I've had a lot of trauma. And how do you go from victim, I'm a victim, to shifting to there's a gift here and turn it into passion and purpose? And
Well, first of all, we would talk about that languaging, right? So I'm a victim versus I've been victimized,
right. Well, you
right?
were a victim as a child. You
Right. Right. And I was victimized because I didn't know any better, right? But in that moment, now I start to look at my story and I start to create doubt in the doubt. So my doubt of me was that I was anything worthy of love.
right,
I was damaged goods.
right,
So now let's create doubt in the doubt. So is that true? Is that true that I'm of no value? Is that true that I'm not something beautiful to be loved on? Right. So one of the things I work with people on, and I tell them, like, if you look at the beauty of I was holding a 6 day old friend, a son of my friend. His name was Timothy, and I'm looking at his divinity, his perfection. I'm looking at his little knuckles and going, oh my God, divine perfection, right? And I thought, what makes us different? Nothing.
nothing.
We are still that divinity. We are still that beauty. We've just gone through things, right? And so now let's unpack. Where did we make meaning about our identity? Did we make a belief system based on what happened to us or what we witnessed in others? Sometimes it's not even something we experienced, it's something we witnessed. And we start to create these beliefs and we start to create these identity. And then we grow up and we're like, this is who I am. It's just like, is it? Is it who you choose to be, or is it who you became because of your unconscious conditioning in your environment? Right.
Right.
So let's break it down. And where I start, Linda, oftentimes is, where is their limitation today?
Yeah.
Because oftentimes we don't know to know. Like that 5 year old in the grocery store, he didn't know at 35 that it was that moment that was making his decisions for today. He didn't know that that moment, what was keeping him insecure and wanting to control everything and everyone in his life, right? So we have to break it down. Where are you limited today? Are you lacking confidence? Are you afraid of entering a relationship because you've been hurt before? Are you not going for the raise because you're afraid to speak your mind? Are you, where's the limitation? Where are you being held back? Are you obese? Are you depressed? Are you anxious? What is the limitation? Let's talk about it. And then let's work backwards to find out where that is. Because oftentimes now, especially in personal development, what I've noticed is we have so many tools. We have so many resources, right? It's just like, oh, do this, do positive affirmations, stand up like Superwoman, do like all those things. And they're amazing. They're really good. But what's happening is we're mindsetting our way out of healing. And so what we're doing is we're painting the wall beautiful and we're wallpapering, but the mold is still there.
Mm,
And so on the outside it looks beautiful and it's just like we fixed it, but on the inside the mold is still there. Or
right.
you're installing new software on an old operating system that hasn't been upgraded. It's going to glitch, it's going to break down. And so once we start to do that, we can start to break down and we can see the other side of the story.
Okay. So you're doing like identity work and subconscious rewiring.
Yes.
And so self-awareness is always number one. I mean, I just since I changed my whole life 2.5 years ago and sold my house and relocated across the country and started a podcast, started the coaching business. I was in real estate for years and I kind of fell into that career, but I've been healing big time for the last 2.5 years, cocooning here and just really realizing all these layers. I thought I was here and I really had way more to go and I'm still doing the work, but because I have a scarcity programming, I have lack and fear, and I had shame that I carried for years. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the lowest vibration. And I didn't recognize that till I was here in Florida. Like, oh wow, I've been carrying shame for like 30 years for what happened to me. And again, the self-love, like working on self-love and unconditional, like, because same thing as you, like I thought I wasn't worthy of love. I've been abandoned by my family and multiple different things. So it's like all taking on these beliefs that aren't truths, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So tell us, how did you get into this work? And Anything you want to share about your journey?
One of the things that you kind of brought to my attention as you were talking, why I say you have to look for the gift or you only remember the pain, is that, we have a society that teaches us what's wrong, not what's right. And as human beings, we default to that, right? We are the hardest on ourselves. Sometimes our self-talk is harsher than you would ever speak to another human being, right? So become that awareness. But what a lot of coaches say, um, your past doesn't equal your future. Like even Tony Robbins, who I worked with for 7 years, your past doesn't equal your future. And I'm like, I disagree with it. Your past can absolutely equal your future. We're just grabbing the wrong parts, right? We say the past is our pain. The past is our wound. The past is what happened to us. And so we're like, oh, I don't want to repeat it again. So your past doesn't equal your future. Well, what about the other side? What about the beautiful soul that got back up? What about the one that decided to continue to be kind, even though she was not treated kindly? What
Mm.
about the resilience that it helped that person build? What about the perseverance? What about those character traits over there? That past I want to bring forward. You know what I mean? So there is an element to us that our diversity gave us. Like, look at you now, beautifully. Here you are hosting a podcast, trying to help other people. You became a coach. You're evolving through your own trauma. Like, how beautiful is that? So you, like me, who lived with shame for many years, we're not educated because we read about it. We lived it, right? Which is a PhD in experience, in my opinion, right? So again, reading how to climb Mount Everest and actually climbing it are two different things,
Yeah.
right? So I hold more value in what you offer, right, than most because I know you experience. I know you know how to think. I know you can peg somebody in shame like that
Mm.
because you know what it feels like, you know what it looks like, you know the behaviors around it, right?
Mm.
So for me in my journey, so I had, sexual abuse with my father from my first memory, my first 18 years, to where I developed that meaning that I was filthy, gross, and no one would love me. Then I met a guy who called it out and basically said, brought me home late one night. Because when I turned 18, I started to rebel. I'm like, you want me home at what time? 10? Okay, cool. I'll be home at 2. It's like kind of like, what do you want? I'm going to do the opposite. And I came home late. My dad was on the porch and angry. Told my then boyfriend, you get out. He told me, you get in, yelled at me, called me names, whatever. Next day, boyfriend says, what's up with your dad? And I said, what do you mean? He was mad because you brought me home late. And he's like, no, 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 that was not an angry father. That was a jealous man. And when he said that, it opened Pandora's box. I shared with him in 2 hours, probably more than he needed to know. But what it ended up telling me is that, well, now you know all my dirty. And you still want to be with me? I fell madly in love. I'm head over heels. Like, oh my God, I didn't think I was lovable enough, right? So he had his own trauma. And by the way, this is not to vilify anybody. I'm in total forgiveness and appreciation for all of my journey. Love my ex, love my father.
That's
Nothing wrong here.
amazing. I love that. Thank you for
Yeah. And I always want to make sure that's clear because I know he's still out there. And this isn't about him, it's about what was in my experience,
right.
right?
And
And coming from that place.
resentment's a block to abundance and to everything, right?
Yeah.
If you were
Well,
to,
and he came from his own trauma too.
right.
He came from an alcoholic mother who he came home, from school and found his sister's unconscious on the floor because she just ripped them apart. You know what I mean? So we understood, and this is why when I talk about trauma, I talk about 3 levels. One is the undiagnosed trauma, then there's unacknowledged trauma, and then there's unresolved trauma, right? So number one, the one unacknowledged could be like the 5-year-old at the grocery store, or I'm sorry, the undiagnosed. He didn't know to know that that was something that was holding him back today. That's undiagnosed. Unacknowledged is what my ex and I experienced. So he knew he had an alcoholic mother who was brutal. I knew I had a father that molested me, right? So we came together at 18 and 21, and we thought, you know what? He said, my kids will never see me drunk. And I said, well, my kids will never be molested. And we thought we fixed it. What we didn't acknowledge was all the micro traumas, right? In the midst of all that. We knew the big one, and we're like, okay, we'll just fix it. We didn't understand the emotional trauma and everything else that we were bringing into it. So he only knew how to communicate with rage and anger, right? My dad was similar. My dad was rage and anger too. He was insults, but he wasn't as volatile as my ex.
Mm.
But for my conditioning, Like, oh, this is normal. This is how men behave. This is what men do. I just got one that's 10 octaves higher, right? So again, it normalized it for me. But in our innocence, we came together believing, you know what, we understand, and we're going to make sure we don't do that. We're going to have the white picket fence, the dogs, and the kids. And for the most part, we did that. But the internal dynamics of our relationship was just, for me, it was death. It got me to an apathetic state. I wanted to die. The only reason I didn't take my life was because of my children. I
Mm,
didn't want to do that to them. But I was willing somebody to blow the red light so I could be done with this life. Because if this is life, I don't want to live it anymore.
right. I
Right.
was
And then
multiple times. I've been
say again.
suicidal. I've been suicidal multiple times, so I do understand.
Yeah.
For the past 2 years, I've brought you inspiring stories and powerful insights to help you create a life and business you love living. But did you know that I also offer personalized coaching and dynamic workshops? If you're ready to move beyond dreaming and start building a life and business that truly lights you up, I'm here to help. Join me for transformative one-on-one coaching or dive into some vision workshops. Let's make your vision a reality and your life an adventure. Subscribe to the podcast for more and go to my website, lindabraincoach.com.
Yeah. And so it was an act of kindness that actually pulled me out of that, which I always love to share because sometimes in a world where there's lot of chaos, we feel that we're helpless. We're not. Every act of kindness that you give, you never know whose life you're saving. You never know what chaos they're experiencing, that your one act of kindness can change the trajectory of their lives, like it did mine.
Mm-hmm.
And these people will never know who they woke up. Right? I'm devoted. I'm dedicated to get people out of suffering. I'm dedicated to be a pain alchemist. I want to transform and transmute your pain into something beautiful because it's available. And so let's do it. Let's stop looking at our pain as something that, because we don't even know we do it. It's like, this thing happened to me, right? Don't you know? That's why I'm not successful. That's why I'm overweight. That's why I have a glass of wine at night. That's why I can't have a relationship because this thing, right? So
Right.
instead, we can look at this thing and say, what else did it give you? Because if you're going to blame, then you need to blame effectively because it also gave you perseverance. It also gave you strength. It also gave you courage. When
Mm.
I was building traps as a little girl to warn me when my father was coming into my room, it didn't always work, but it somehow brought me peace to know that he was coming.
What did you
So
do?
I can
You
look
were
at,
building
bu-
what?
I was building traps, like
Traps. Oh.
warning signs
Oh.
that would warn me when he was coming in my room.
Oh.
I could look at that and say, how tragic, right? That a little girl had to create traps. And it is. But I can also see the curiosity, the resourcefulness, the creativity, right? The resilience, because that's also present. So one makes me sad and hurts my feelings, and the other one helps me fall in love with her. I
Mm.
get to see her beauty in the midst of her pain because
Yeah.
it's there.
Yeah.
Both are available. I get to choose which one I take with me and which one I use to build my character moving forward, and also how I can now navigate and regulate future challenges. And I think that's this human journey anyway.
So this is incredible just listening to you. I always say the podcast brings me is divine people. Like I literally, whatever I need comes through the podcast. Like I just love listening to you and it's just very powerful to me personally. And I know it's going to resonate with so many people, but I do have a couple of questions if it's okay. Like, did your father, like, number one, I'm in awe that you forgave him and that and all that, but did he go to jail for this? I mean,
No, he did not. I did not report it. It was something that I'd only known since my first memory. So when
oh,
I was 18 and I left, and I got married, by the way, because back then I was in love. I thought he's the only one that's ever going to love me, right? And my mom of Catholic faith, again, no offense, I honor
right.
everybody's wishes, but for her, I told her I'm moving out. Because now I'm 18. I'm moving out with my boyfriend. She's
Right.
like, well, she wouldn't have that. That would be embarrassing for her daughter to be living with a man and not be married. So she's like, well, if you love him that much and you want to live with him, then marry him. So I
Right.
moved out Monday. I was married Friday.
Oh, wow.
That's how it went down.
Okay.
Right. So again, so now being in it, Um, you know, I
So are you someone that perhaps did like the memories of the abuse, the sexual abuse didn't show up till later in life? Like they were
absolutely.
crossed and then you remembered.
Well, it was part of my life. Now that I got away from it, it wasn't the sexual abuse, right? That part stopped, but all of the emotional damage that it had done to me. Now I'm unfolding into a relationship. Now I'm unfolding into a marriage. Now I'm unfolding into being a mom, and all those things, all those fears, all those limiting beliefs, all those I'm not enough would pop up right all over the place to the point that in my marriage I was very subservient. I
Mm,
was just like whatever I had to do to keep the peace.
mm.
Right. So yeah, the damage of my childhood was unfolding now in this relationship, in my marriage.
People pleasing for sure, which is what
Oh
I,
yeah.
right,
It's whatever I had to do in order for the explosion to not go off. And now I have children, so I have them to protect.
right.
So all of that. But as far as my father goes, by the time my father died, which was back in 2014, he died on Valentine's Day. He had leukemia, and he was 84. And 2 weeks shy of his death, my half sister and I were caring for him, and I was left alone with him for a little while. And by then, I had already done my own healing, and I was good with where I was, and I was already coaching. I was beginning to coach, and he had a lucid moment because he had dementia as well. And he looked at me and he just said, "I wish I could have been the father you deserved."
Mhm.
And I was able to respond without a hesitance in saying, "Dad, you were perfect. You were exactly who I needed you to be so I could be who I am today. And I'm good. And I
Mm,
get to serve people and I get to see, when they live in shame and I'm good." And I could see the heaviness lift from his cheekbones, you know what I mean? Like that look, that return to innocence almost like, and I do believe he died with that peace in his heart,
yeah, it was
knowing that I had
beautiful.
forgiven him.
Yeah, you gave him a gift before he passed. That's so beautiful.
Yeah. And it's honestly, forgiveness is a gateway. It's a gateway to surrender, releasing from us the pain or the it shouldn't have happened. Because when you walk around saying it shouldn't have happened, right, you're in an argument with the reality that it did.
Right.
It doesn't mean we like it, but if we say it shouldn't have happened, like my brother's murder should not have happened. If I say that, then I'm in an argument and I'm signing up for suffering
Mm,
and I'm going to lose
right.
100% of the time,
Yeah.
right?
Suffering's a choice, I think. I mean, we can feel our feelings, but we don't have to dwell there. We can choose
That's
consciously
right.
better feeling thoughts and because we control here, even though it's often we allow this to control what we control, we get to program the new
Hmm.
beliefs, the new identity, right?
Yep, absolutely. And I think that's the biggest part. Like you said, awareness is number one, right? So once we're aware of the beliefs, like when I first picked up a book, like I never would read, I would always fall asleep. Okay. Now I'm 38 years old, going through divorce, freaking out, not knowing who the frick I was. I didn't even know what my favorite color was. I didn't know anything about myself. I was a chameleon and I molded into whatever I needed to be to keep the peace. So now I pick up this book. It was The Unmistakable Touch of Grace by Cheryl Richardson. And I don't remember the whole book, to be honest, but I remember one part and all it said, and I don't remember the exact sentence. I have to look it up, but it basically told me I could believe differently. Just that alone, I was like, wait a second. So I don't have to believe that all things are this way, or I don't have to believe this thing about me. Like I can change that. I can choose that. What? And it opened my eyes, and that just became an insatiable hunger. I wanted to learn more about the human experience. I wanted to understand. And so that got me on an obsession of reading more books, going to seminars, workshop, my own therapy, right? All the way to where now I've worked with shamans. I've worked with, I mean, like you name it. I'm like, I want to understand why my dad did what he did, why my mom ignored me when I told her at 16, why my husband did what he did, and why I allowed it.
Mhm.
And that's what brought me to the now, to understand the human experience, to be able to look at everything through divine order, even as much as my little brother, who was also murdered. Now, 30 years later, my little brother's murdered, totally different story, totally different lives. And it was one of those uppercut moments in my life where I was like, what the hell? Like, I already lost a brother to murder. I checked the box. This is not happening again. How could this be happening again? Right. And because I've done the work, and the message I got from God, source, universe, whatever you believe, was you need to eat your own medicine. So if
Mm,
I'm telling people you have to alchemize your pain, if I'm telling people that you have to find the light in the darkest moment, you need to do it right now. And
mm,
in my deepest, darkest, most gut wrenching sorrow, I could see things like, you know, people posting on my brother's Instagram about how he affected their lives. I could see how my family was showing up in a way I'd never seen before. I could see three of his oldest daughters who had never met acting like they were raised together because of their unity now. I could see the beauty, and I could also be witness to the depth of my pain was a reflection of the depth of my love.
mm.
So it
How,
was there.
yeah, how long ago was that recent brother?
2 years ago, November.
Where was this?
It
What?
was in Compton, California.
Okay. And was he, how old was he?
He was 42.
Oh my goodness. What
He
happened?
had he has 9 children.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and he was working with the little ones. At the time they were 7 and 8. Um, and he was taking them to school. He was helping them. He actually had opened his own business, which was great. My little brother was 15 when my older brother was killed, and it devastated him. He idolized my brother.
Mm,
And from that moment on, things had already come out about what happened with me and my father, which came out much later when I was already married, and my mom left my dad, and there was just a lot of trauma in there.
yeah.
And
But
my
really,
little brother was
okay.
searching for um he was searching for my older brother and all these different men,
Mm,
and couldn't find it, but he ended up joining a gang, because again they preach brotherhood and they preach I got your back, until he got arrested and nobody was there to pick him up. You know what I mean? Like, so he had been having this up and down life, up and down life, up and down life, and he had finally gotten to the point, I want to say it was probably toward his late 30s, probably around 40, that it was like, I'm not ever going back kind of thing. And he opened up a business called Resilience LLC. He was going to build it. I told him, I go, look, your life, first of all, you're not a good criminal because you keep getting arrested. So stop it. Two, and two, your life is meant for something. Like, I could be the greatest coach in the world, but there's certain group of people that won't listen to me like they will you. So utilize your journey, utilize everything you've been through to coach some young kid who's about to make a stupid decision. I see us speaking on stage together, and he agreed and he was working toward that. And then unfortunately, someone that owed him money,
mm.
was angry,
Oh,
and that's all it took.
that's awful. That's wild. I'm so sorry. That's so devastating. Now, what about the kids? Do they have a mother? His,
They do. Unfortunately, you know, they're in a better place now. They weren't in a good place back then. They're moved now to a different city, which I'm really grateful for. It's been very recent because where they lived was not good. And the mom is, constantly needing help and support. But, I think they're going to be okay now that they've moved with her grandmother. Um, so I'm just praying for them and constantly checking in when I can.
yeah. Oh,
But it's been quite the journey.
right. That's amazing. I mean, it's just, yeah, you've got so much. So he was actually starting to be a coach, Resilience LLC, right?
Yeah, no, he was stepping into, yeah, what he wanted to do with his life, and how he was raising the little ones,
Yeah.
teaching them things and getting them into soccer, and yeah, he was doing all the things he was supposed to at the time when this happened, which was made it so tragic.
Yeah. And did you find love a new husband since your divorce? Hey there, are you ready to start living your life by design? If you are ready to start living your life by design instead of default, I have something special for you. I am inviting you to my 12-week Dream Builder Mastermind. It's a transformative group coaching experience designed for men and women who are ready to create the life they've always dreamed of. Here's what you're getting. You're getting a crystal clear vision of your dream life, proven tools to turn your goals into reality, the confidence to take bold, inspired actions, plus a small supportive community to cheer you on every step of the way. This isn't just another course, it's an opportunity to build a life you love. This mastermind kicks off on January 20th and enrollment is ending on January 11th. The special is now through January 3rd, so if you're interested in saving, join today. I am so excited. The link is in the show notes.
No, I have not. I have not. I'm in relationship, but I'm not married.
Oh, okay. Well, that's nice that you're in
Yeah,
a relationship. Yeah. Um, so what is next for you? So you're just doing amazing things. And so you worked for Tony Robbins for a while?
I did.
It's incredible. I love that.
Yeah.
Love him. He was like, I was listening to Tony Robbins and Brian Tracy back in my 20s, 30s when I was driving around in real estate because I knew that I had negative programs and I was grew up in a kind of negative, critical and, mindset. I knew I was aware and I was trying to fix it because you're in sales. You have to be positive, right?
Right.
So I was listening to him for years, and I remember him saying the opposite of depression is purpose. And yeah, he's definitely incredible. Um, so that must have been amazing. What was that like?
Would you feel you found your purpose in part of this podcast and your coaching work?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Yes. I love helping people and I love kids. I love animals. But yeah, I do absolutely self-develop. Just similar to you, I am in love with anything that's going to help me, that's going to make me smarter, heal stuff, help others. I have all of Gabby Bernstein's books, all of Gabby Bernstein's cards. Did you find Louise Hay when you were doing your thing? Like this love your life, love yourself, heal your life. Did you find those books and stuff?
No, no, not so much. I think Louise Hay mostly was in understanding the body, the physical body, and the pain points when we have are connected to an emotion. I think that part is something that I love. I can't remember the title of the book. It's a little book, but it talks about healing your body, and you can tell if you have, like, let's say, a side ache or whatever, a stomach ache. You can look it up, and you can see that it's tied to an emotion. And I've done deeper work with holomorphic therapy and understanding our emotional state is a reflection of an outward pain or fibromyalgia or an autoimmune or whatever, stuff like that, where I really understand our physiology and our mindset and how we can shift our biology. So it's very fascinating, but I love that. But a lot of the work I did, um, from Tony, I also became a heart math trainer. Got into the Institute of Heart Math, which I absolutely love. It's the study of the rhythm of the heart for the last 30 to 40 years. And it talks about our vibrational frequency because if you think about it, our heartbeat is beating, right? The doctor listens with a stethoscope because it's creating a sound, which is emitting a frequency, right? So they put a heart rate variability monitor, and you can tell based on our emotional state, whether it's frustration, anger, worry, doubt, whatever, you can see the chaotic rhythm in our heart, right? Our heart, it exemplifies and it sends out a sonar. Just like when I believed I was not worthy of love, I attracted someone that would prove me right, right? Because that's the sonar I was sending in my
Yes.
rhythm, right? And so when we come back to our autonomic nervous system, when we come out of fight or flight and we come back into love, compassion, appreciation, gratitude, all of those renewing emotions, then we start to see the coherence of the rhythm of our heart. And it's beautiful. You can see it live. And so what that does to me, it allows me to bring in a spiritual conversation to a scientific standpoint of what's happening in our bodies. The minute we go into a negative state of being, the minute we go into negative self-talk, the minute we go into belief systems that don't serve us, our body is fighting us, right? Our body's job is to keep us alive at all times. And when we're feeding it with negative stuff or anger or resentment or all of that, it's like our body's going, okay, let's fight this energy that's coming our way because our boss is telling us we can't accomplish our dreams. So don't make sure you don't give her ideas. Make sure you don't give her resourcefulness because she says we can't accomplish our dreams and she's the boss and she's always right. Right. So it's this constant tug of war that when we learn to regulate our nervous system and come back to an equilibrium of emotional regulation, then we renew our system. Now, all of a sudden, we open up to aha moments. We open up to creativity, resourcefulness, an idea that we didn't know we could access because we're connecting with that universal intelligence that's telling our heart to beat. We can't do it if we're in contraction. So, heart math is another resource that I absolutely love. Tony, for me, was incredible from getting out of a deep, dark place to believing that there could be another life. But beyond that, I wanted to understand the healing process. I want to understand what's happening. Why did I create those beliefs? Because it's not enough to just push through. It's just not. Because then again, we're stacking new software on an old operating system. If I say, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, but my operating system says, yeah, right, Jessie, who do you think you are? You see the tug of war, and I
Yeah.
can push through and I can be strong and I can make it. I can get some footing, but it's always going to be a push and it gets exhausting. It's
Yes.
kind of like I work with a lot of high achievers, right? And one of their things, they don't realize that they're chasing worthiness on their next achievement.
Right.
And so on one aspect, on paper, it looks amazing. Wow, you're highly successful. Wow, you have 2 cars. Wow, you have a vacation boat. Wow, you have, all these things. But inside, oh my gosh, I worked with one lady who hit her $5 million mark. That was her mark. She wanted to hit it. She hit it. Her husband was about ready to leave her. She was in massive depression. She was at the soccer games, but she wasn't there. She was glued to her phone because she wanted to hit that number so bad. And she didn't realize that it all tied down to when she was 10 years old, a friend of the family's whose name she didn't even remember said to her, "You'll never be as good as your sister or
Mm,
as fit as your sister." And
mm,
so she was in competing with every woman in her business line, with her sister, with herself, like that stuck in her mind. And so
oh,
on paper, she was fit, she was beautiful, she was goes to the gym all the time, and she hit her $5 million mark, but she was massively depressed.
oh, wow. It's so interesting. It's so
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. It's incredible. Yeah, because wholeness, we have to come from wholeness. Like, yeah, you can be sitting in a 1 bedroom space and be in more content and have more inner peace and love for yourself and others than this woman you just described, because she had all the things on the external but she didn't feel worthy unless she was making
No.
money and all that. Yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
And even when she hit her $5 million mark, it's like, okay, what's the next thing?
What's next?
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's never enough. It's a cat chasing its tail.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it just, all it does is make her feel worse and worse and worse. And God forbid that her sisters start getting a little bit further than her. Then she'd go into panic,
Oh,
and now working double time. And she didn't know it was tied to that unconscious conditioning she had created when she was 10 years old because this one human being said that to her.
yeah,
Now, when you look at it on one hand, and this is what I teach my clients, is like it gave you a huge gift because look, you are financially successful. You did
right,
some really great things, but
right.
it's time to get out of the arena. Grab the muscle it gave you and leave the rest.
Yeah,
And that's when you can now start building from a beautiful, healed, empowered state of being versus a wounded, chasing, I have to prove
right.
in order to be enough,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is exhausting.
It is exhausting. I was that person too. I always had to prove my worth, and it's sad. It's really sad. And we are all worthy just for breathing and being alive and being a God's child. We're just worthy for breathing. And like you said, am I lovable? And you were lovable. It didn't matter, we're all lovable. Just, it doesn't matter what happened in the past. And we all have these stories that we believe, and that's what holds a lot of us back and I've been on that journey. Like I finally realized I'm just worthy for breathing. I don't have to achieve and do all these things. You know what I mean? It's incredible. Yeah. Wild. So let's see. Do you have a podcast? Let me look and see.
I don't,
Okay.
not
And
yet.
Not yet. Okay, awesome. But so you are the superhero of your life. Let me read a few things. From trauma to triumph, turning pain into purpose, passion, and impact, how to find light in the darkest moments. Um, your path is divine. Yeah, tell us a little, let's talk on that and then we'll wrap up. It's like the divine path. Like we signed up for this before we came here, right?
Hmm. Well, it's like people say, why does this happen to me? Right? Like, why is this happening? Is it happening to you or is it happening for you? Right? Now, I added another one, which is it's happening from you. So if we have, let's say, this divine contract with God, before we got here, we said, God, I want to experience this life as forgiveness. So send me down. Like, okay, great. But if you're going to experience life as forgiveness, well, you're going to need something to forgive.
Hmm.
Right. So, okay. So then my dad raised his hand and said, well, I'll be that for you. And then my ex raised his hand and said, well, I'll be that for you. Oh, and then my mom, yeah, I'll make sure I ignore you at 16 when you try to tell me what's happening to you, because you're going to need to forgive me too. It's just like, oof, okay. And then we sign up for it. And so then we have this divine choreography written and scripted. Now, in the moment that we're getting the blows, it doesn't feel like it, right? It's just like, why is this happening? Like, I can't believe, right? And if God could whisper, and you say, like, Jessie, you know what? I know this really sucks right now, but if you knew what I have waiting for you, you'd understand why I need you to build courage right now, why I need you to build resilience, why I need you to pick yourself up in one of the darkest times of your life. Because I didn't know that as I was building traps as a little girl, that I was going to need resourcefulness, creativity, resilience when I got my divorce. Because I was making $8 an hour back then. He had all the money, but everything was in my name. He foreclosed on the house. We turned in the cars, repoed them. I was turned upside down in any 15 ways. And now I'm trying to find a place after we, built a 3,000 square foot home. I'm trying to find a place for my kids and I to live, making $8 an hour, right? And my kids were traumatized already, and I'm having to look at apartments, or I'm having to take them out of the school district, or you know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
didn't know that I was going to need that resilience. I didn't know that when I was a little girl, I was building a muscle that I was going to later need when I was going through divorce. So, do I wish I could get the lessons differently? Sure, but that's not how it works. Life is full of polarity. We don't know light without dark. I can't, it's like when I say, please, God, give me courage, he doesn't give me courage. He gives me opportunities to be courageous,
Mm.
right? He does, when I say, give me strength, he doesn't give me strength. He gives me opportunities to be strong.
Wow.
And in those moments, I pull that muscle. And now here I am at 38 years old, wondering who the frick I am. And I get to pull the muscle that I created as a little girl. And what that does is it starts to build a pathway to love the Jessie in the experience. I get to love her for going through those dark nights of the soul for me to be who I am today, for
Yeah.
me to be the one that wants to help people out of pain, for me to be saying, you know what, you're in suffering. It's okay. I got you. Take my hand. And I could not be that without her.
Yeah. You're incredible. How long ago was that you were making $8 an hour and having to start over with your children?
It was back in 2003. So I want to say 11, 12 years ago now.
Wow.
Is that right? Is that right now? No,
You've
20, sorry, 20 years ago,
wow.
21 years ago.
It's
Yeah,
wow.
crazy. Yeah.
Amazing. You're
That
amazing.
began an insatiable journey, to just kind of see it from like, it's one of those things where when everything is taken from you, like all you got to do is take one step at a time. And I remember bawling my eyes out because I wanted it. My boys, I have twin boys, and they were 17 and a half at the time. They were in their senior year. So I didn't want to take them out of their school district, but I couldn't afford anything that was in the school district. So
Wow.
I was looking at homes because I wanted to make it as less traumatic as possible. And they were used to having their own rooms. And now I'm like, I can't afford any of them. The houses that I found were filthy and gross. And I was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? So I literally had a list of places I would go look to see where we're gonna live. And I would bawl my eyes out, pull
Yeah.
over, wipe my tears, and I would concentrate and I would look at them as that every tear that fell was another stepping stone to help me walk a little taller. I
Mm.
wipe my eyes and I'd go to the next appointment and go to the next appointment until I finally got us an apartment. but it was the best I could do at the
Yeah,
time.
you
But I
did the
knew,
best. Yeah. And the boys, how are they today?
oh,
And
my kids are my greatest treasure. So my boys are sound healers. So they create vibrational frequencies to help heal the body. And they do sound healings for, large festivals or even corporations if they want to bring a healing. They also help a nonprofit organization of veterans, and they do a once a month healing for the veterans with PTSD.
oh,
So they're world changers as well.
that's amazing. And where are you in the world?
I am in Texas.
Oh,
I'm just north of Austin.
nice. And do you use any EFT in any of your work? Emotional.
No, but I do love it, and I do recommend it. My son has actually used it for anxiety a great deal, which has
Nice.
been beautiful. So I do believe it's a powerful practice for sure. My daughter, I also have my daughter who, you know, have been talking to her about that recently too, just to help her regulate, come back out of anxiety, because we lived in such a hypervigilant atmosphere or environment while I was married. They're navigating their own sense of,
Yeah, of course.
anxiety.
Yeah. I just had a guest on the show. It was this week it came out, and his dad died when he was 2 in a crash, and when he was 26, he was in a car accident and it changed his whole life. Anyway, he's a coach, but I asked, his mother had remarried and he had a stepfather, but they divorced when he was 14. And he said he took 80% of the income, and he basically went from ski trips and boating to free lunch at school. And he was 14, and so it's just resonating when you said all
Yeah,
this, because I mean, kids are resilient, and you had love. You had the love, and you did the best you could with what you had, and that's all that we can do. And
absolutely.
yeah. Did the father stay in their lives?
He ended up moving out of state.
Oh,
If there's a long story behind it, but he at the time had made death threats. He was very angry,
okay.
and it started to affect his job. And
Oh,
so his job basically said, you either move here or you might lose your job. So he ended up moving out of state, and so the kids, it was hard. But now, they're in their 30s, and they've learned how to build their own strength and to be able to have a relationship that is beautiful with their father.
that's good. That's good. Yeah. I think it's just important to forgive and to heal. This has been incredible conversation. I love talking to you. I am just in awe of your work and your
Thanks so much.
vulnerability. Thank you for sharing. And where can people find you?
Absolutely. If you go to iamfiercegrace.com, you will find multiple ways to work with me. If you don't know how to work with me and you want to ask me questions, you could also just schedule a call. It's a free call, and I'm happy to honor it and just help you find clarity of where you are now, where you'd like to go. And if I can help you get there, I definitely will. That will guide you to either my Fierce Grace program, which is all about healing, and also accessing your human potential. And I also have a mastermind for women called Tender Warriors, which I absolutely love. And yeah, and I also do one-on-one coaching. So I'm here for however it is you need to be served. We're starting 2025, and I'm super excited for this year. We're leveling off from 2024. It's been challenging for a lot of people, but I do believe 2025 is going to bring in a different energy. And I'm happy to support anyone who feels stuck or in pain, or they just can't look past what happened to them, because I get it. I understand. I'm not saying what happened was okay, but I do want to help you pull the power it gave you, because it didn't take you out. If you're still standing, if you're listening to this podcast, then you're still here. So there's something greater for you. I promise. We just have to seek it, and we'll seek it together.
And I agree. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Oh, and I also have the free gift I want your audience to have, which is a 10-step guide to freedom, that you'll see in the show notes. And that is just a vehicle to help you no matter what your situation. Because sometimes we think, yeah, Jessie, but you don't understand. I'm stuck. I can't get out. Whatever, you don't know what to do. This guide will at least give you some steps that you can take right now to serve your well-being.
Oh, okay. Beautiful. It's like a little mini guide. Okay.
Ebook, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. I loved
Thank
talking
you, Linda.
to know you. Yes. And
Absolutely.
yes. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Empowered the Podcast. I am truly grateful for your time and for being a part of this amazing community. If you found value in today's episode, please consider sharing it with someone you think would benefit from listening to it. Together, we can create a ripple effect of empowerment and healing across the planet. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you'll know when the next episode drops. And if you could be so kind, leaving a review would mean the world to me. Your feedback not only helps us grow, but also ensures that more people find this podcast and get the inspiration they need to transform their lives. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for being part of the movement to create a more empowered and abundant world. Until next time, live empowered.